"That's the man who fixed our car, Mommy." The little girl pointed toward the CEO who had helped them. Snow was falling in thick, silent blankets over New Haven, covering the city in a pristine white. The roads glistened with a treacherous layer of ice, and the sky hung low and gray. Emily Harper squinted through the frosty windshield, gripping the steering wheel as her worn-out silver sedan rattled over the slush-covered pavement. The heater hissed weakly, offering precious little warmth against the biting cold. In the back seat, 5-year-old Lily was bundled up snugly in a pink coat and a matching dress. Her breath fogged the window pane as she drew little hearts on the glass with her gloved finger. "We're almost there, sweetie. Almost there," Emily replied, her eyes meeting her daughter's in the rearview mirror. "Just a few more blocks." The sedan groaned beneath them. A knot of anxiety tightened in Emily's stomach. She whispered her usual winter prayer, a daily ritual to keep the old car running just long enough to drop Lily at preschool and get to work. But on this particular morning, the car refused to cooperate. A mere 2 blocks from Lily's school, the engine sputtered violently and lurched to a dead stop. The dashboard lights flickered once, then went dark. Emily muttered a curse under her breath and coasted the car to the shoulder beneath a flickering streetlight. She exhaled a sharp, white puff of air, blinking back tears of frustration against the cold. Lily leaned forward. "What happened?" "The car's just having a rough morning," Emily said, forcing a smile. "Stay buckled in, sweetie." "I'm just going to take a look." The cold hit her like a physical blow the moment she opened the door. The wind clawed at her coat, tugging her ponytail loose and stinging her cheeks with its icy bite. Snow crunched under her feet as she stepped into the storm, pulling her coat tighter around herself. She popped the hood, releasing a hiss of steam and the unmistakable smell of trouble. The engine was a patchwork disaster held together by old parts and prayers. Emily leaned over it, her gloved fingers already going numb as she jiggled the battery cables and muttered to herself. Cars drove past, their taillights disappearing into the snow, but not a single one stopped. Lily watched from inside, her small face pressed against the cold glass. Then, Emily heard the crunch of tires slowing down behind her. Emily turned around. A sleek black SUV had pulled up behind the sedan, its headlights cutting a path through the falling snow. The driver's door opened. A tall man emerged, calm and confident, dressed in a long dark overcoat and black gloves. Snow dusted his shoulders as he approached. "Do you need some help?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. "I'm not sure," she answered with hesitation. He simply nodded, walking past her without a word to study the engine. He then reached into his coat and produced a portable jump starter, a device that was sleek and clearly top of the line. In a matter of seconds, he had it connected. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared back to life. Emily blinked in disbelief. He shut the hood with a solid thud, brushing the snow from his gloves. "Let it run for a few minutes before you drive." "Thank you," she said, breathless. "Seriously, thank you." He gave a single nod, his gaze shifting to the back seat. Lily waved from behind the glass, her gloved hand pressed flat against it. He offered a faint, gentle smile. "The roads are slick, so drive carefully. Keep her warm." Then he turned and walked away. Emily watched, frozen, as he returned to his SUV and vanished into the storm. She stood there as the snow began to pile up on her shoulders, her heart pounding in her chest. "Mommy!" She turned around. Lily had rolled down the window and was leaning out, her cheeks a bright, rosy pink. "That man is just like a superhero. Just like in my movies." Emily let out a shaky laugh. "Yeah," she murmured, her eyes still fixed on the road. "Maybe he is." She got back inside, cranked the heat to full blast, and glanced one last time in the rearview mirror at the quiet road, the falling snow, and the empty space where a stranger had appeared only to vanish. And somewhere deep inside, Emily felt something small and unexpected. Hope. The next morning, the air inside the office building buzzed with a quiet urgency. Emily Harper strode down the carpeted hallway, her fingers clutching a folder of neatly printed agendas. Her golden ponytail swayed behind her as she made her way to the executive conference room on the 12th floor. She'd been asked to help prepare for the quarterly board meeting, a task she usually found routine, almost comforting. But today, her thoughts were a jumble. The events of the previous morning kept replaying in her mind. The stalled car, the snow, the man with the quiet voice and black gloves. Who was he? Why had he helped so quietly, only to disappear as if he'd never been there at all? Emily pushed open the heavy glass door to the conference room. The hinges whispered shut behind her. She moved quickly to the far end of the long table, arranging the documents in front of each leather chair. The room slowly began to fill with the department heads and executives, all exchanging polite greetings. Emily kept her eyes down, focused on her task until a sudden hush fell over the room. It was subtle, but immediate. A few people shifted in their seats, and then she saw him, the man from yesterday. He walked in calmly, his posture straight, his expression serene. He still wore a dark overcoat over his tailored suit and made his way to the head of the table with an effortless confidence. Emily's breath caught in her throat. It couldn't be, but it was. He took his seat. A senior manager leaned over to the woman beside him and whispered, "That's Nathan Crawford, the new CEO." Emily stood frozen, the last of the folders still clutched in her hands, her eyes locked on his face. Nathan Crawford, so that was his name. The man who had knelt in the snow to fix a stranger's car, the man who had walked away without waiting for a word of thanks. Nathan glanced up briefly, and their eyes met. Emily saw the faintest flicker of recognition in his gaze, but it vanished in an instant. He averted his eyes, his expression unreadable, and began speaking to one of the directors seated to his right. Emily forced herself to move, setting down the last folder with trembling hands. She tried to appear calm, to steady her breathing. Her cheeks burned with a mixture of confusion and something dangerously close to embarrassment. What were the odds? She stepped aside silently, standing against the back wall with the other assistants. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she watched him lead the meeting. Confident, eloquent, respected. There was no trace in his voice of the snow-covered streets from the day before, no sign of the man who had offered help without expecting anything in return. But she knew it was him, and he knew that she knew. Emily kept her eyes lowered for the remainder of the meeting, speaking only when spoken to. Nathan never looked at her again, not directly. When the meeting concluded and people began to file out, Emily lingered by the door to collect the leftover documents. As Nathan passed, he slowed his pace ever so slightly, just enough to say in a low, almost inaudible voice, "I'm glad the car held up for the rest of the day." Emily looked up, startled, but by the time she raised her eyes, he was already walking away, his steps silent and steady down the hall. She stood there in silence, her hand pressed gently against the folder to steady herself, wondering if she had imagined it all. Outside the windows, the snow was beginning to fall again. After the board meeting, Emily did her best to fall back into her routine. She filed documents, updated schedules, and answered departmental emails, anything to keep her mind from drifting back to the man who had fixed her car only to appear at the head of the conference table. Nathan Crawford never mentioned that morning, not in passing, not in meetings, not even when their paths crossed, which they often did now that he was her boss. They shared silent elevator rides and exchanged polite nods in the hallway. Once, Emily caught him looking at her in the cafeteria line. He glanced down at his phone almost instantly, but she had seen it. That same quiet recognition from the snowy roadside. There was no favoritism, no words that crossed a line. Yet, something unspoken hung between them, an invisible thread humming beneath the rhythm of their daily routines. It unsettled her more than she cared to admit. That weekend, as the snow began to fall again in slow spirals, Emily bundled Lily into her coat and boots for a quick trip to the grocery store. She tried not to think about the bills, expired or lost in the car's rattling exhaust. They only needed a few essentials and a breath of fresh air. "Can we look at the toys, Mommy?" Lily asked, hopping beside her, her pink dress peeking out from under her snow-dusted coat. "Only if we're very quick," Emily said, managing a weary smile. They walked side by side through the biting wind, making their way to the store just a few blocks from their apartment. The cold seeped right through their coats. and Emily's fingers ached even inside her gloves. As they approached the entrance, Emily noticed a man standing near the curb. He was tall with a straight back, his collar turned up against the wind. It was Nathan, standing beside a parked car, checking his phone, wrapped in the same dark coat he wore at the office. Before Emily could react, Lily gasped and broke into a cheerful hop. "That's the man who fixed our car, Mommy!" Her voice rang out clearly over the crunch of snow and the passing cars. Nathan looked up, crouching slightly as Lily ran up to him, her small arms clutching a stuffed pink penguin. "Well, hello there," he said warmly. Emily rushed over, her cheeks flushing. "Lily, slow down." She met Nathan's eyes, embarrassed. "I'm so sorry." She remembers absolutely everything. He smiled. Not a smirk, not a look of amusement, just pure kindness. "She has a good memory. I never properly thanked you," Emily said, "for the other day." "You're welcome," he replied simply. They stood in a quiet moment as the snow drifted down, dusting their shoulders and hair. Then Nathan glanced toward the street. "My ride is here." He gave Lily a little wave before getting into a black car and vanishing into the traffic. Inside the store, Emily tried to refocus. She and Lily picked out bread, pasta, and a few canned goods. As they passed the toy aisle, Lily stopped in front of a small display and pointed to a pink teddy bear with sparkling ears. "Can I have this one?" she asked. Emily crouched down, checked the price tag, and let out a soft sigh. "Not today, sweetie. Maybe next time." Lily nodded, brave and quiet. Outside, Nathan, who had lingered longer than he needed to, had seen it all. His expression was impossible to read. He turned and walked away. 10 minutes later, Emily and Lily were back on the snowy street. The wind tugged at their coats as they approached the silver sedan, now lightly dusted in white. And that's when Emily stopped short. A brown paper bag was hanging from the driver's side mirror. She stared at it for a moment, then slowly, she reached out and lifted it off. Inside was the pink bear with the sparkling ears, a small bag of groceries, a couple of sandwiches, and some Innan instant noodles. There was a small carton of milk and 2 pairs of woolen gloves, one adult-sized and one child-sized in pink. At the bottom, folded neatly, was a note. "For a warmer winter day. From the man who once fixed your car. No name, no title, just those simple words." Emily stood frozen, clutching the bag close as Lily peered inside and shrieked with joy. "Mommy, it's the one I always wanted." She hugged the bear with all her might, her happiness a sunbeam piercing through the biting cold. Emily couldn't speak, a lump forming in her throat, her eyes burning with unshed tears. She scanned the now empty street. No black car, no tall figure. But she didn't need to see him to know. And in that profound moment of silence, with the snow falling in a soft, steady rhythm, Emily felt something settle deep within her chest. It was gratitude, and perhaps something more. After the supermarket, Emily didn't mention the note to anyone, not even to Lily. She folded it gently, tucked it away in her bedside drawer, and left it there like a cherished secret pressed between the pages of her life. She never saw Nathan leave the bag. She never heard the sound of a car door or the crunch of footsteps in the snow, but she knew. And somehow, the quietness of the gesture made it feel even more significant. At work, everything appeared to be exactly the same. Nathan remained his usual self, the poised CEO, always polite in the hallways and sharp in the meetings, never once crossing a professional line. Emily followed his unspoken lead. She kept things professional, her conversations brief, carefully steering clear of any hint of familiarity. She didn't want to assume, or even worse, to hope. Still, she noticed the little things, the slight pause when she entered a room, the way he'd linger in a conversation if she was standing nearby. One afternoon in the company cafeteria, she found an extra packet of honey next to the tea station, her absolute favorite, the kind that was rarely ever stocked. She never asked who had left it, so when he approached her after a staff meeting that Thursday, she was taken completely by surprise. He was standing beside her at the refreshment table, holding a paper cup. "There's a small dinner gathering this Saturday. Just a handful of people from the office. he said casually. "You should come." Emily blinked. "Me?" He just nodded. Just a dinner, a chance to connect outside of emails and deadlines. The way he said it, so light, so easy, with absolutely no pressure, made her feel comfortable enough to say yes. On Saturday night, Emily arrived at the restaurant. She had been expecting something formal and quiet, with stiff white tablecloths and nothing but business chatter. But what she discovered was the complete opposite. It was a cozy, family-owned Italian trattoria tucked away on a quiet corner, its windows steamy with warmth, the aroma of roasted garlic spilling out whenever the door opened. Inside, there were mismatched chairs, shelves lined with vintage wine bottles, and soft Italian music playing from a speaker in the corner. The place was filled with warmth and history. Nathan was already there, seated in a corner booth, wearing a dark sweater instead of his usual suit. He stood up as she approached and gave her a genuine smile. "It's authentic, not corporate." "I used to sit right over there," he said, pointing to a table near the kitchen. "My mom used to be a waitress here when I was a kid. The owners would let me stay in the back while she worked double shifts." Emily's eyes softened as she listened. She took the seat directly across from him. "Have you been coming here long?" "Not since she passed away," he answered softly. "But tonight, it just felt like the right time." Over steaming plates of pasta and garlic bread, they spoke not of work, but of life, of childhoods, struggles, and regrets. "I used to think being poor was something you had to hide," Emily admitted. "Like, if you just kept quiet about it, it wouldn't follow you into adulthood." Nathan nodded in understanding. "My mom would clean offices in the morning and then work a shift here at night. The winters were brutal. Sometimes we had to choose between heat and groceries." A lump formed in Emily's throat. She thought of all the nights she'd driven on empty, counting out loose change for gas. She remembered the evenings Lily went to bed with a special snack, because there wasn't enough for a proper dinner. She whispered, "I always just assumed people like you, CEOs, grew up in a completely different world." Nathan held her gaze. "I didn't become a CEO to forget where I came from. I became one so I would never have to forget." A silence settled between them, filled with a deep, unspoken understanding. Nathan leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "I didn't help you that day to impress anyone," he said. "I helped because I remember wishing someone, anyone, would have helped my mom, just once. But nobody ever did." Emily blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. In that moment, something inside her shifted. He hadn't always been at the top. He had once been out in the cold, living the struggle, and in that instant, the space between them simply vanished. She wasn't just his assistant, and he wasn't just the CEO. They were two people who had known hardship, who had found something rare and quiet in one another. By the time they left, the snow had started to fall again, soft and silent. Nathan held the door, and as Emily stepped out into the night, she glanced back at the small booth by the window. She took in the warm light and the sound of laughter spilling from inside. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't dare guess where this fragile new thread might lead. But for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel alone. Something between Emily and Nathan had shifted after that quiet dinner. Not in ways the world could see, not yet, but it was there in the pauses between words, in glances that lingered a moment too long. It was in the way he always seemed to slow his pace to match hers whenever she was near. They never spoke of it directly. Emily made sure of that, always keeping things professional. She never let her smile become too familiar or her gaze linger while in the office. But after hours, there were walks down quiet streets, shared coffee in parked cars, and long conversations that felt like coming home. And then there was Lily. She adored Nathan with the kind of wide-eyed innocence only a 5-year-old can possess. She started calling him Uncle Nate all on her own, and he never once corrected her. He'd pick her up when Emily had to work late, bringing her books about silly animals and learning her precise hot chocolate preference with a dash of cinnamon. No marshmallows involved. One Sunday, they spent the afternoon building a lopsided snow fort in the park. It collapsed within minutes, and they all tumbled down, lost in laughter. Emily hadn't laughed like that in years. In that moment, their two different worlds simply melted away. They were a family, just not an official one yet, but not everyone saw it through the same lens. Karen Monroe, the head of human resources, was a woman who missed nothing. She saw how Nathan would pause whenever Emily entered a room. She noticed the gentle shift in his tone whenever he spoke to her. At first, she dismissed it as a fleeting spark of interest, perhaps even pity. But then, the whispers began. Emily and Nathan were spotted leaving the building around the same time. Someone claimed to have seen them grabbing coffee together on a Saturday. Another witness saw him buying a pink backpack at a toy store. Karen didn't start the rumors, but she certainly didn't stop them. She let them fester, even nurturing them. "She's a clever one," someone remarked by the copy machine. "I heard she came from nothing, a single mom struggling to get by. I guess she found the fast track from the admin pool to the CEO's inner circle. That's one way to climb the corporate ladder." The rumors snaked their way through the office like a chilling draft. They were quiet, chilling, and impossible to ignore. Emily felt the shift almost immediately. Colleagues who once smiled warmly now avoided her gaze. The lunch tables, where there was always a spot saved for her, were suddenly, mysteriously, always full. Conversations would fall silent the moment she walked into a room. Someone once left a cruel message on her notepad, tearing the page out before she got there, but the indentation remained. She saw it. Through it all, Karen remained untouchable. Her smile always just polite enough to deflect any blame. Emily tried to push through it, to keep her head down and just do her job, but it was agonizing. Worse than their judgment was the fear that it would hurt Nathan. He had fought too hard to get to where he was. She couldn't be the reason people started to question his integrity. One evening, long after most of the office had cleared out for the night, Emily knocked softly on his office door. He looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He rose to his feet. "Of course. What is it?" She stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. "They're talking," she stated simply. "It's more than just whispers now. People think I'm using you, that I'm trading favors for my position." Nathan's jaw clenched. "That's ridiculous." "It doesn't matter if it's ridiculous," she countered. "What matters is that they believe it. And I can't keep coming to work every day pretending it isn't affecting me. And you haven't done anything wrong." "No," she said softly, "but this has the power to hurt you, and that's something I can't live with." He looked at her, his expression revealing he already knew what was coming. "I'm resigning." "Don't," he said quickly, his voice low. "I have to," she whispered back. "I can't be the shadow that follows you into every meeting. You deserve better than that." He fell silent. He didn't argue, and he didn't try to stop her again. But the look in his eyes, the sight of something sacred slipping through his fingers, nearly shattered her. She turned away before he could see the tears, and she walked out of his office that night, her heart completely broken. One hand rested on the door, the other pressed against her chest. Behind her, Nathan stood motionless, enveloped in silence, clutching nothing but the echo of what might have been. The ballroom was bathed in a soft golden light, exuding a quiet elegance. Round tables, draped in crisp white linen, were scattered across the floor. Each centerpiece was a delicate swirl of pine cones, fairy lights, and winter roses. A string quartet played softly in the corner as employees mingled in their formal attire, their laughter blending with the gentle clinking of glasses. It was the company's annual employee recognition gala, and despite having tendered her resignation, Emily had decided to attend, not for accolades, not for closure, but for a promise. Lily had been eagerly counting down the days, thrilled at the idea of dressing up, seeing Uncle Nate, and eating fancy food that didn't come from a box. Emily had chosen a simple navy blue gown, her golden hair swept up in a neat arrangement. Lily was radiant in her favorite pink dress and a pair of tiny, sparkling shoes, clutching her mother's hand tightly as they entered the ballroom. No one greeted Emily the way they used to. The whispers hadn't quite died down. Some gazes lingered a moment too long, but she paid them no mind. Tonight, she was here for Lily. They found seats near the back of the room, far from the center of attention. Lily swung her legs happily, sipping sparkling apple juice and pointing up at the glittering lights. At the front of the hall, the MC tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our CEO, Mr. Nathan Crawford." The applause that followed was polite and respectful. Emily froze in her seat. Her eyes drifted toward the stage as Nathan appeared. He looked composed, serene, just as he always did in public, but there was something behind his eyes tonight, something quieter. He began his speech effortlessly, thanking departments, praising milestones, and acknowledging achievements. Emily dropped her gaze, feeling the soft thrum of her heart beneath her ribs. Then, without any warning, it happened. Lily slid down from her chair. "Lily, wait," Emily whispered, reaching for her, but the little girl was already darting across the room, weaving between tables like a playful breeze. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the little girl climbed the steps to the stage, her pink dress swishing around her, her cheeks flushed with determination. Nathan turned, startled just as she reached him. She tugged on the hem of his suit jacket, pulled the microphone down to her level, and with a clarity only a child can muster, she announced to the entire room, "This is the Superman who fixed the car for Mommy and me. Mommy and I miss him very much." A stunned silence descended upon the ballroom. No one moved. No one whispered. There was only stillness. Emily stood frozen, a wave of heat rising to her cheeks, every nerve alive with shock and disbelief. Her hands trembled in her lap, her eyes wide, her lips slightly parted. Nathan remained completely unfazed. He looked at Lily, and something soft and unmistakably genuine crossed his face. He knelt beside her, wrapping her in a gentle embrace. The entire room fell silent, watching this unscripted moment unfold. He stood up, Lily's small hand still held in his, and returned to the microphone. His voice, when he spoke, was calmer now, warmer. "And that is the little girl who reminded me." He paused, swallowing hard. "Why we are here, to be kind, even when nobody is watching." A beat of silence passed. Then, slowly, the applause began. It was soft at first, then swelled into a genuine ovation. Emily could barely see through the tears welling in her eyes. She watched as Lily beamed, still holding Nathan's hand, waving to the crowd as if she hadn't done anything unusual at all. But something had shifted. The whispers were gone, replaced by something else, something just beginning. The morning after the gala, the company's internal network was buzzing. Someone had uploaded a short video from the night before, grainy, shaky, and brimming with emotion. In the clip, Lily stood center stage in her pink dress, her small voice echoing through the microphone. "This is the Superman who fixed the car for Mommy and me. Mommy and I miss him so much." Then came Nathan's response, holding her hand with a quiet strength. "And that is the little girl who reminded me why we're here, to be kind, even when nobody is watching." The video spread like wildfire. By lunchtime, department heads were forwarding it to their teams. Employees who had once kept their distance from Emily now watched in silence, some with softened expressions, others with visible regret. Something had cracked open, and from that fissure, empathy began to flow. The board of directors scheduled a private meeting 2 days later. There were concerns, of course. The personal implications for a CEO, especially involving an employee, always raised red flags. But after reviewing the facts, the conclusion was unanimous. There had been no breach of conduct. Nathan Crawford had not used his position to manipulate, pressure, or promote. If anything, he had acted with remarkable restraint. The matter was closed with no action required, except for one Karen Monroe. Her part in the once whispered rumors was now laid bare for all to see. Several employees came forward, recalling things she had said, text messages she had sent, and emails she had implied things in. She was formally reprimanded by the board. Her once solid influence within the company began to crumble under the weight of her own bitterness. She kept her position for now, but the damage was done. And Emily, She returned to work the following Monday, not with her resignation, but with a quiet, unshakable dignity. Colleagues who had once shunned her now offered tentative hellos. Some even managed an apology. She accepted it all with grace, though her own trust was slower to return. But the true turning point came later that week. It was evening when Nathan knocked on her apartment door. Lily had drifted off to sleep on the sofa, her small teddy bear nestled against her cheek. Emily opened the door to find him just standing there, not in a suit, not armed with formal words, but simply there. He stepped inside, his eyes taking in the familiar space, the coat rack overflowing with scarves, the kitchen still warm from their supper. There was no pretense, no distance, just him. "I've said a lot of things these past few months," he began, some of them carefully crafted and others left unsaid entirely. She faced him, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "This time, I need to be perfectly clear," he said. "This isn't about a grand gesture, or a holiday dinner, or even about fixing your car." He took a deep breath. "This is about a home, a real one. Not just for me, and not just for you, for the three of us." A lump formed in Emily's throat. She shook her head, tears already beginning to well in her eyes. "You don't have to do this." "I want to," he interrupted softly. "I want to be there in the mornings when Lily crawls into our bed asking for pancakes. I want to be right beside you when things get hard, and when things are beautiful. I want a life with you, Emily. All of it, the ordinary and the sacred." Her breath caught in a sob, tears finally spilling over, and before he could utter another word, she threw herself into his arms. Nathan held on tight, the kind of embrace that says, "You are home now." Outside the window, the snow had begun to fall again, but inside, everything was finally, blessedly warm. 1 year later, the wind still whispered through the bare trees, brushing against the window panes with soft, wintry sighs. The snow was falling again, a soft and steady blanket, covering the quiet suburb in a fresh coat of white. But inside the little house tucked away, just on the outskirts of New Haven, there was only warmth and laughter. The old silver sedan, the one that had gotten stuck in the snow and brought two lives together, no longer roamed the streets. Instead, it sat proudly parked outside Emily's bakery, lovingly polished, its hood adorned with flowers in the spring and fairy lights in the winter. The neighborhood kids loved climbing inside, pretending they were off on magical journeys. The locals had affectionately nicknamed it the Love Car. The bakery, named Lily's Table, had become the heart of the neighborhood. People came not only for the flaky croissants and warm cinnamon rolls, but for the feeling that hung in the air, hope. You could feel Emily's touch in every corner, in every pastry, and then behind every smile. Nathan had helped fund the shop, quietly and without any fanfare, but he had let her take the lead, letting her build it in her own way. It was her dream, after all. He just wanted to help it grow. Their home, not far from the bakery, was a modest place, but it was overflowing with life. A garden flourished out back, and a wooden swing creaked joyfully beneath the old maple tree. Lily had claimed the attic as her own personal castle, a realm of books, pink blankets, and pure imagination. That particular morning, Emily stood at the kitchen counter, pouring hot water over fragrant loose-leaf tea. The aroma of ginger and honey wafted through the air as Nathan wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a gentle kiss onto her shoulder. Outside, through the window, they watched Lily descend the front steps, dressed in her signature pink dress and an oversized coat. She was still wearing the very same woolen gloves he had once left for her in a simple paper bag. They were patched up now and a bit frayed at the edges, but she wouldn't part with them for the world. She spotted their elderly neighbor walking her dog across the street and waved with unbridled enthusiasm. Then, with the uncontainable joy that only a 5-year-old can possess, she shouted for the entire block to hear. "My daddy is the man who fixed our car." The neighbor chuckled softly, raising a gloved hand in acknowledgement. Emily let out a soft laugh, shaking her head in amusement. She's still telling everyone that story. Nathan tightened his embrace around her waist. It's a good story. She shifted slightly, her gaze meeting his. It is. He leaned closer, his voice a soft whisper in her ear. I may have fixed your car that day, but you fixed my heart. Emily's eyes glistened. Her smile deepened as she turned fully to face him. Outside, the snow continued its gentle descent, blanketing rooftops, gardens, and parked cars in white. But inside the small kitchen, filled with the aroma of tea and the sound of a little girl's laughter echoing from the street, winter had lost its bitter chill, and somewhere in the quiet stillness, spring had silently arrived. It was a happy ending, filled with warmth and the kind of love that grows in silence and then remains forever. Thank you for watching this touching journey of Emily, Little Lily, and the man who once fixed their car, Nathan Crawford. This wasn't just a story about a broken-down vehicle on a snow-covered road. It was a story about healing hearts, building a home, and a love that bridges any distance. If this story touches your heart, if you believe that quiet acts of kindness can truly change lives, please hit that like button to show your support and subscribe to our channel for more touching and inspiring stories that warm your soul and stay with you long after the story ends. Until next time, be kind and always keep hope. Posika, M.